I was involved in a car crash. Just seconds before I passed out, I learned that the boy we'd raised for years was actually my partner Ben's illegitimate child. When I came to, both Ben and the kid were right there standing before me. Sweetie, why don't we just adopt him? Ben proposed. Nah, I shot back. Let your mom take him in instead. Treat him like another son. That day was supposed to be a cheerful family outing. Ben was behind the wheel while I sat in the back with our son, Max. As we were exiting a tunnel, Max mentioned that the door on his side felt kind of wobbly and asked me to check it. I shrugged it off, unbuckled my seatbelt, and leaned over to inspect it. But before I could even see anything wrong, the car suddenly spun out of control and veered off the road. I instinctively shielded Max from the flying shards of glass from the shattered rear window. Since I wasn't buckled in, I was hurled out of the car during the violent tumble off the highway. Lying there, barely clinging to life, I overheard a bone-chilling conversation. Is she gone? One voice asked. No worries, she's definitely done for, replied another voice, cold enough to send shivers down my spine. Cool, now can we get my real mom back? Hold up, let's sort out her stuff first, and oh, think of the insurance cash. Once we get the money, how about a family trip overseas? Mom always wanted to visit Korea. Sure, whatever you and your mom decide. My anger couldn't stop my life from fading away, and I eventually closed my eyes unwillingly. Maybe out of some twisted mercy, fate gave me a second shot. I found myself back on the day Ben brought his son into our home. Everything was still up for grabs. At that point, we'd been married for 7 years. Ben had just returned from a business trip with a little boy in tow, the darling kid I'd adored in my previous life, Max. Seeing Ben's mom showering affection on Max made me want to laugh bitterly. So, the whole family was in the loop except me. Ben handed Max over to his mom and then called me into the living room. Ray, there's something I gotta talk about, he began. In that room, Ben recounted Max's tragic backstory. At 5 years old with unknown parents, he was raised by his grandmother until she passed away, after which he drifted from place to place as an orphan. The poor kid's tale tugged at my heart, and before I knew it, I had agreed to adopt him years ago after hearing the same sob story. But now, no way was I about to let him have his way. Ben, sticking to his practiced lines, hesitated before finally suggesting, Darling, why not adopt him? Right then, his mom peeked into the room. So predictable, I thought with a half smirk, and replied softly, Forget it. Let your mom adopt him and treat him like your bro. Ben looked like he'd just swallowed a fly, stammering something about, Don't be absurd, mom's not that young. His mother, having overheard every word, looked mortified. Before any further talk, I massaged my temples and mumbled, I'm beat today, I'm gonna hit the sack. Lying in bed, sleep refused to come. Back then, I never fully grasped the malice Ben harbored. I remembered when Max was just 5, shortly after we got hitched, that he'd cheated. Ben's own father had died young, leaving his mom to raise him single-handedly. When I met him, his family was deep in debt, but he seemed genuine and treated me well, so I brushed it off. At the start of our marriage, we agreed to focus on our careers and postpone kids until later. We delayed until Max came along. He was so well-behaved and heartbreakingly sweet that I truly welcomed him. But later, when I got pregnant, Max ran away several times, even narrowly escaping danger on one occasion. I tried talking to him, but he was stubborn as all get out. Then, Ben's mom packed up her things, crying that she was taking him back to the countryside so she wouldn't be in my way. Ben was torn, repeatedly saying we should wait until Max was older before having another baby. The stress of it all led to my miscarriage. Looking back, it's clear they wanted to kill my baby on purpose. In the darkness, a single tear rolled down my cheek. That accident, along with the insurance scheme, they were planning on killing me for the payout. When did this plan start? After Ben brought Max home? Or was our marriage a sham from the start? Who exactly was this real mom they mentioned? Who was she? Today was Saturday, and I woke up early to find Max already seated obediently on the couch. When he saw me, he chirped, Hey, Auntie. I watched him for a long minute before gently pinching his cheek. Max didn't dare budge, and when Ben entered and saw my little gesture, he looked alarmed and quickly tried to intervene. "Ray, come eat," he said. I let go of Max's now slightly reddened cheek and grinned. What a cute kid. The concern in Ben's eyes was hard to miss. He tousled Max's hair lovingly as he guided him to the table. After breakfast, Ben brought up the adoption topic again. "Let's mull it over," he said casually. I gathered my things and left the house. Once outside, I headed to the city library, Ben's favorite haunt with its old-school book borrowing system where every book came with a borrower's card. This meant I could see the names of everyone who ever checked out any book. I made a beeline for the children's section, flipping through cards to find any clues about Max. He loved reading too. When we first took him in back in my past life, he mentioned a few classics. When I asked where he'd read them, he said at a neighbor's place. My gut told me he was into reading and that the books he liked might be linked to Ben. Ben occasionally lent me his library card, so I kept track of the books he checked out, since he never used his own. Could it be his real mom he talked about? I compared several borrowing cards, searching for a pattern in the names. They were mostly unfamiliar, but two names kept popping up on different cards for these titles. One name made my heart skip a beat. Mia. That last name got me thinking. Ben, Mia, Max. Could it be her? Just one name wasn't enough proof. I needed more evidence. When I returned home, I saw my own mom whipping up dinner. Unlike usual, I didn't help out. Back then, I never lifted a finger at home, usually letting the housekeeper do the chores. But ever since Mom moved in, she insisted on handling things herself to save a buck. With Ben's cajoling, I had to let the housekeeper go. Ray, Mom thinks it's your house. If you let her help out, she'll feel more settled, Ben had said. Yeah, our place was bought by my parents, after all, and the deed's in their name. Ben's explanation sounded fine, but since she was his biological mom, I couldn't boss her around. So every time I saw her cooking after work, I'd end up lending a hand. Ultimately, I ended up doing most of the housework. But today, I had zero plans to lift a finger. Mom was clearly in a foul mood, clattering around in the kitchen. After dinner, I heard her making a fuss with the dishes in the sink. Meanwhile, Max, always the good kid, piped up. Uncle, Auntie, let me help Grandma with the dishes. I do it all the time at home. I ruffled his head and said, Hey, don't start calling people Grandma. Mom's still young. Calling her that makes her sound old. Max, being just 5, hid behind Ben, clearly a bit confused. Mom stormed out of the kitchen, saw us gathered on the couch, and immediately started massaging her aching back. Getting old already, just a bit of movement, and there goes my back, she grumbled. I played along. Yeah, you're aging, no doubt. Her face twitched. I finally acknowledged her as Max's grandma. She didn't dare argue further, worried I might not let it slide this time. She wasn't too keen on the title either. She'd been pampered since moving in, always complimented on her youthful looks. Being called a little old lady just wasn't sitting well with her. Later, Ben cheerfully announced, Ray, you've agreed to adopt Max, right? Let's go sort out the paperwork. Nah, I replied coolly. I got a buddy who's clued in on adoptions. I'll bring the forms and we'll wrap it up. Ben knew I had connections with high-ranking folks, so he chilled out. Then, recalling a name that had slipped from his lips earlier, I casually asked, Is Max's last name Smith? Ben's smile faded a bit as he turned cautious. He nodded slowly. Yeah, Smith. So who's he named after, his dad or his mom? I pressed. His grandma. She raised him on her own, he replied smoothly. I don't want to change his name, so we'll just call him Max, okay? I agreed. You're so sweet, Ray, Ben said, trying to hug me, but I dodged. Ben chuckled awkwardly. Later that night, locked in the bathroom, I fired up my phone. I'd installed a virus program on Ben's device to keep tabs on him. Sifting through his messages and contacts, almost 4,000 of them, I saw a familiar name, Mia, listed as a colleague with no chat history between them. My hands trembled as I clicked on Mia's profile. Her calm, light brown hair in the profile picture exuded serenity. Even her Twitter feed was full of everyday snapshots with no hint of a kid. But I wasn't buying coincidences like that, no sir. Sunday morning, Ben was dragged off to work, barely grabbing breakfast before leaving. Mom eyed my leisurely pace with disapproval. "Ben's got it rough. No rest on weekends while you're chillin' at home," she grumbled. I munched on my bun with a bright smile. That's what you get when you graduate from a top university. Life's easy for me, unlike Ben, who's always hustling. Mom's face turned red, chopsticks frozen midair. She wanted to argue but couldn't find the right words since every truth I said hit home. I hadn't mentioned it out loud before to spare their feelings. After breakfast, I headed back to my parents' place. I almost forgot what today was until Mom reminded me. Today was the day my parents planned to transfer the house into Ben and my name. Ben never said much about it, but his actions always hinted it was important. Every time he had drinks with friends or pulled late nights at the office, I'd tell him to chill. Our combined incomes were more than enough, but he insisted on giving me a real home. I was touched, even though I told him not to worry. My parents never looked down on him. Being an only child, I never saw the need to fuss. But Ben wouldn't listen and kept grinding away. Eventually, my parents feared that the whole house situation might mess with our relationship. So, after years of waiting, they finally transferred ownership to both of us. When I got home and saw Dad taking his usual handful of pills, I swallowed my bitterness. My folks are getting old, and finding out about an illegitimate child would probably be too much for them. I had to cook up some excuse to keep them off the house topic. Dad looked puzzled but didn't press. Mom, noticing me home, smiled, albeit a bit sarcastically. The busy man's back, thanks to Max lending a hand at least. Without looking up, I replied coolly, "Well, if you're not busy, those adoption papers aren't going to just drop from the sky." Ben, beaming happily, came over to help with my bag and shoes. Mom couldn't help but ask, "So, is everything settled? Can Max be added to our household registry?" I gave her a slight hum and said, "You really think these offices run like your family business, where you can just decide on a whim? If we had a helper, I wouldn't be chasing around my friends all day." That comment left both Mom and Ben a bit red-faced. In the past, I'd always compromised to keep their fragile egos intact, never mentioning what I did behind the scenes, but they took it all for granted. Ben quickly recovered, urging everyone to sit down. "Ray, these procedures aren't done overnight," he said. I slumped on the couch, tired, and prepared the lines I'd practiced. Michelle said it's going to be tough and might even need some grease money. Ben had looked into adoption rules himself, knowing it wasn't easy, especially with existing relatives, so he didn't doubt my plan and eagerly asked, "How much are we talking?" "500,000, I declared. "What?" Mom was the first to jump up, fuming. "That's highway robbery. Isn't she your friend? Or is she just milking you for cash?" Ben didn't object, sharing Mom's sentiment. I couldn't help but smirk. In my previous life, Michelle had helped out a lot with this, and I'd chipped in from my dowry, worried it might be too steep for Mom and Ben. But now, I wasn't budging. "If it's too pricey, then forget it. That money's not for Michelle. It's to boost our connections." "Why insist on that title?" Mom snapped. "The 500,000 wasn't arbitrary. Most of our savings were locked in investments and term deposits that we couldn't touch until they matured. We didn't have that kind of cash on hand. That money was Mom's retirement fund, her precious stash. She'd never had a formal job, so no Social Security. After moving in with us, she'd always gripped that money tight, lamenting how unlucky she was, envious of my parents' secure retirement. "Your folks got lucky with a fat retirement plan. They must be living the high life," she'd say. Even though Ben and I reassured her we'd take care of things, she always seemed on edge. Finally, Ben and I decided to give her $1,000 a month as a thank you for all her help with chores. He called it a sign of respect. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but since they always teamed up, I eventually agreed. After all, Ben and I had a decent income, so $1,000 here and there wasn't a deal breaker. That money was Mom's lifeline, but now I needed to get my hands on it. Leaving them with mixed emotions, I retreated to my room. I pulled out my phone to check on Ben. Still no contact with that woman named Mia. Looks like it's time to pay a visit to Ben's company. The next morning at breakfast was quiet. In my previous life, Max would have been trying hard to impress me since I'd agreed to adopt him. But now, after my icy responses, he wouldn't dare speak up. Mom noticed and felt bad for him, piling extra meat on his plate until he was stuffed. I just watched, grinning, not getting involved. When we first brought Max in, I had him thoroughly checked at the hospital. Turns out his blood sugar was high. The doctor warned that if not managed, it could lead to diabetes, a condition that would require lifelong insulin and stunt his growth. I took the doctor's advice to heart, imposing a strict diet and routine on Max. I cut back on sugary treats like cake and fried chicken and enrolled him in basketball and swimming classes for exercise. But Mom thought I was being too harsh, insisting that kids wouldn't get diabetes and that doctors were just trying to scare us for profit. Max even got scared of me. Ben once criticized me for it too, but I patiently explained that a kid's health was non-negotiable. Eventually, though Mom never fully understood, even Ben conceded a bit. Under my careful watch, Max grew up healthy. Thinking back, I watched Max devour fried chicken and soda, then looked away with a smirk. This time, I'm staying out of it, I mused. I'll just watch and see what kind of person Max turns into, raised by your so-called love. Before I could leave, Ben stopped me. Last night, I already talked with my mom. She's coughing up 500 grand, all in the bank, he said with that troubled look, as if he hoped I'd come to the rescue with my dowry or call my folks. Back then, he'd come up with every excuse for me to fork over cash, like a sick relative needing urgent treatment or a flashy new car to impress the boss. Once my dowry was drained, he'd stop bugging me. But now, I just watched coldly. He grumbled, "We can't ask Mom for money, she saved it the hard way." I shot back, "Then forget it. Even if he's not on your family registry, isn't he still part of the Ben clan?" I meant every word, and Ben was visibly taken aback as I finished. "Think it over, kiddo. I gotta get Max back to Tom today." That afternoon, Ben called to say his mom had agreed to use her 500 grand in savings, but we'd need to repay her once our investments matured. I happily agreed. Not like they'd ever see that investment mature anyway. At noon, I left work early and headed over to Ben's office. In my past life, he'd walked all over my parents' resources to make a name in finance. He even rose to general manager. Everyone knew that if you didn't have cash at home, don't mess with finance. But Ben, all high and mighty, stuck to his path. Before we met, his performance was so poor he nearly got canned. I had used my connections, classmates, friends, relatives, to help him land sales. That's how he slowly made a name for himself. Little did I know I was raising a backstabbing leech. During lunch break, I strolled over to his desk. He looked surprised. It had been nearly 3 years since I last visited. Back then, I'd drop by for lunch or to leave work together. Many of his clients were my buddies, so I'd often join him in meetings. He used to say, "Ray, every time I know you're coming, I can't focus because I get so hyped. You're the biggest distraction." I believed him, so I stopped swinging by to let him work. Now, when he saw me, an anxious look crossed his face before he asked, "What are you doing here? Can I have you here?" I snapped back, "I'm just pleasantly surprised. Let's grab lunch." He tried to hustle me out quickly, but I wasn't having it. "No need. I ordered takeout. It'll be here soon. Let's head to the lounge downstairs." The building was packed with employees who usually ate in the lounge. As we sat, Ben slyly prodded about why I'd suddenly shown up. "Worried about me?" I teased with a cheeky grin. His face twitched uncomfortably. "Nah, I'm all for it. The more, the merrier," he mumbled. As the lounge filled up, I spotted that all-too-familiar face, Mia, sitting alone nearby. Ben stayed cool, not showing any unease. Catching sight of Mia casually munching her lunch, I blurted out, "Oh, by the way, I'm pregnant." The comment was loud enough for nearby diners to hear. Mia's hand slipped and her spoon clattered to the table. Ben glanced over instinctively, then quickly averted his eyes. Mia made a bit of a scene, but Ben wouldn't let on. What a total giveaway. Later, as we headed home, Ben leaned in and whispered, "Ray, could you be for real pregnant? We haven't even—" "Just kidding, look how jumpy you are," I whispered back. Ben looked confused, his handsome features betraying a hint of worry. Since I already knew the truth, I ignored his confusion and focused on my meal. "There's no doubt, Mia's the real mom," I declared. That day, Ben got home late. probably busy explaining things to Mia while I kept busy with my own errands. I told Mom to withdraw her 500 grand in cash for me, and I also gathered more dirt on Mia. Turns out, she's a finance whiz. You know how most companies strictly ban office romances between finance and marketing because of all the sensitivity? Well, Ben was in marketing, so that made things even murkier. Back at home, I was juggling all these tasks, and Mom didn't seem too happy. During dinner, she kept glancing at me, sighing and cuddling her favorite grandson. For us regular folks, life isn't easy, she said. It took years to save that money, and now it's gone. 500 grand, can you believe it? She clutched her chest as I stayed silent. Then she added, Jane, don't take it to heart. I'm not like your in-laws. If they dropped 500 grand, they wouldn't blink. But for me, that's my lifeline. Hearing her mention my folks, I knew what she was angling for. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I chuckled and said, Hey, it's 'cause this kid's from the Ben clan, not the Smiths, right? Your real grandson? Can't you spare a bit? I made sure to emphasize real grandson, and Mom's face changed color. I turned to Max, who looked a bit puzzled, and said, Max, your grandma's worried about spending too much on you. It's making her all riled up. You better behave, or she might just boot you out. I scared him enough that he stopped eating, his lips curling into a pout. He was about to cry when Mom quickly started comforting him, stammering, Don't say stuff like that, sweetie. Grandma would never kick you out. This is your home, all right? I was pretty ticked off by the chaos my words caused. After dinner, I put down my bowl and headed back to my room. The day before Valentine's Day, Ben had mentioned he was off to meet a client and wouldn't be back that night. I knew today was Mia's birthday. Last year around this time, she tweeted about not wanting to spend her birthday solo, accompanied by a half-melancholy selfie. I remembered it well. Around that time, I'd snagged 2 last-minute tickets to a Piano Masters concert and begged Ben to join me. He said he had to chase down a big client deal, and I felt bad he had to work late. But I also really wanted him there, so I convinced him to come, promising to help him seal another deal through my network. This year, I made sure Ben spent Mia's birthday with her, no matter what. Ray, don't worry, I'll definitely be back for Valentine's Day, he reassured. I smiled as I waved him off. That night, Mia's Twitter updated. Love lets me bear all hardships. Happy birthday. Wishing my next birthday to be spent with my family. The post was careful, showing no trace of Ben on Valentine's Day. But while Ben was still en route home, I saw a photo of him and Mia in matching outfits, checking into a hotel, holding hands, just like any ordinary couple. I expected to feel angry or sad, but oddly, I felt nothing. All my past sorrow and anger had transmuted into pure disdain. I just wanted them all to pay for what they'd done. Finally, Max's adoption papers went through. Thanks to my subtle hints and guidance, the neighbors didn't immediately assume it was Ben and me like in the previous life. Back then, Mom would play with Max in front of his kindergarten, and when she saw me, she'd call me over. The papers are done, right? She'd ask, so I'd just announce, Finally, I have a grandson. I'd told her to hold her tongue until everything was finalized and to avoid any mess. Today, she proudly pushed me to present the household registration. Neighbors gathered around, all eager, until, get this, the paperwork listed Mom as his mother. What? What's this? I played along, feigning surprise. It must be a clerical error. How'd it end up showing as your kid? No way, no way, Mom insisted. This has to be fixed ASAP. The generational roles are all mixed up. Mom looked all anxious, and I pretended it was too complicated to change, adding, Besides, with kindergarten enrollment coming up, we can't delay any longer. Let it be. Doesn't matter whose name it's under, right? We're all family. The neighbors nodded. Yeah, adoption's adoption. Whether it's under your name or as a couple, who cares? I mused that having it under her name was probably better. It wouldn't mess with any future kids Ben and his wife might have. Still, the neighbors found it odd for such a perfect couple to suddenly adopt a child, which made the situation seem more plausible. Mom kept protesting. What kind of mess is this? I'm suddenly a grandma. A friendly neighbor called out to little Max, Hey kid, come here, call her Mom now. The chubby little Max looked up puzzled. How did Grandma become Mom? Just then, Ben arrived from work and the neighbor pointed him out. Seeing Ben's stunned expression nearly made me burst out laughing. After the drama, the three of us headed back home, but I was the only one in a good mood. Change like this was hard for them to swallow, so I pretended to console them. Let's let Max start school first. We can fix the paperwork later. Reluctantly, they agreed. Later, Mom was so keen on not taking Max out that whenever they did, people teased her, saying Max should call her Mom. It drove her nuts. Ben also avoided taking Max out, steering clear of any awkward titles, unlike before when he'd proudly take him to school in the park, playing the doting dad. The reason behind these drastic changes wasn't just about titles. It was also work-related. That night, an exhausted Ben came home, and after a bit of brooding, he finally spoke up. We hadn't really talked for a few days because of the whole Max registration debacle. "Ray, aren't those your friends? Can you talk to them?" he asked. I shook my head, feigning helplessness. "You told me to stay out of your business, remember?" "So I'd lost touch with them." "What happened? Why couldn't you keep them on board?" I added, a bit sarcastically. Back then, he'd used my connections but was always afraid people would say he'd climbed the ladder because of me. So he didn't want me mingling with my friends. But now, all of a sudden, he remembered me. Ben didn't take my words too kindly and left in a huff. He'd been under so much pressure lately, losing clients left and right while vying for that VP spot. So I decided to give him a big push. I told him I'd arrange for a major client to visit his company just so I could watch the drama unfold up close. He happily took me along. At the meeting, I could tell my little gift had worked. People were giving us knowing looks. Ben, still subtly flexing in front of his coworkers, was cornered when a colleague quietly asked if the client had been referred by me. Ben looked annoyed, clearly not wanting to admit he relied on his wife. Then a female coworker, unable to hold back, dug out a bunch of photos from the trash and slammed them on the table. Some folks not only climb the ladder on their wife's connections, but even cheat, worse than animals. "What the heck are you saying?" Ben snapped back. "The photos are in your email, clear as day. What more do you need to deny?" The coworker tossed the pictures aside and stormed off. Ben's face fell as he saw snapshots of him and Mia, clearly caught in some intimate moments. His coworker's expressions turned grave, and he couldn't even look up. When his boss showed up, all the tension broke, and Ben managed a facade of distress. With sympathetic glances all around, I quietly grabbed my car keys and left. I drove back to my parents' place, singing along to the radio, and spilled everything out to them. Ben cheated and even has a love child, so we're getting divorced. My parents were initially shocked, but when they saw I wasn't overly emotional, they calmed down and fully backed me up. I mailed Ben the paternity test results and divorce papers at his office, then blocked all his contacts. I didn't need any of his apologies. I wasn't interested in hearing his lame excuses. I knew Ben would probably try to fight the divorce since without me he'd be left with nothing. But as his client list dwindled and his reputation crumbled, reality set in. It took him a while, but he eventually agreed. I set an appointment at the courthouse. That day, friends and family joined me at the registrar's office. When I saw Ben later, he wasn't the confident guy he once was. He got off the bus looking a bit disheveled. "Well, I did take the car," he mumbled. Approaching awkwardly, he managed to squeeze out, "Ray, I'm sorry, please let me explain. Max was just an accident." Despite his efforts, I'd had it. "Enough," I said sharply. "Sign the papers." He hesitated. "What? You got a problem with the property division?" "Ray, after all these years, you're really going to be this cold?" he pleaded. "You want me left with nothing?" "Exactly. Is there something wrong with that?" I shot back. "The house and car were my parents'. You secretly spent our joint assets on your mistress and your kid. Consider yourself lucky. I'm not asking for compensation." I raised my voice so everyone could hear, and they all looked at Ben with utter contempt. "No buts. Sign. And I promise I won't meddle with your clients anymore." He admitted he'd only come today because he was backed into a corner, his scandal costing him the VP slot. In a company that strictly forbids office romances, Mia had quit to save her job, leaving Ben to fend for himself. His key clients, all tied to me anyway, pressured him to keep up performance. He didn't want to lose me, my lifeline, but his company's ultimatums left him no choice. In the end, he signed, and we finalized the divorce. Clutching the papers, he tried to speak again, but I slapped him hard. That's for what you owe me. Shocked, he barely had time to react before my friend stepped in, and I delivered a second, and then a third slap. This is for having no conscience. My hand trembled as I finished. Amid the chaos, Ben's mom, Mia, and Max all showed up. Their quarreling filling the room, with Ben's mom wailing the loudest. I want my 50 grand back, she demanded. 50 grand? What 50 grand? I replied, completely baffled. It's your money, Mom. You withdrew it all. How is that connected to me? Realizing my little trick, she lunged to hit me but was held back. Mia interjected, You've gone too far. From the start, you plotted against us. You took Ben's money and now even the elders' cash. Aren't you scared of karma? Her face soon showed a new bruise. Everything I took was mine. Without me, Ben's a pauper. If you value it so much, hold on tight. She tried to argue, but one of my friends yanked her hair, making her yelp. The room descended into chaos as security separated us. In the melee, the Ben family members looked battered, and Ben kept shouting threats. Ray, you knew about Max from the start, didn't you? He yelled. Wow, you're ruthless. You did all this just to leave me with nothing? I just wanted you back where you belonged, back to being a nobody before you met me. But it wasn't enough. Knowing they'd never budge on moving out, I sold the house dirt cheap to a real estate agency. The agency showed up with a crew, trashed all their belongings, tossed them out, and warned them never to come back. The spectacle was filmed and posted online, stirring up quite the buzz. With nowhere to live, they ended up in a cramped 20-square-meter dorm for Ben's employees, barely enough room for 4 people. I still sneak peeks at Ben's phone through that virus program I installed before I discovered his shady ways. He's rarely home these days, and Mia's always bickering with him over money. It's the usual in-law drama and cash woes. Ben's mom even started blaming Mia for all our misfortunes, and Mia shot back, even turning Max against his own grandma. Ben's stuck in the middle, scribbling apology letters, trying to patch things up, but it won't be long before he starts missing these messy days. Which finance company doesn't have a little dirt on them, especially when big money and performance deals are on the line? I sent evidence of Ben's bribery and bogus expense claims to his company's headquarters. Soon enough, HQ launched an investigation. The branch threw Mia under the bus, reporting her to the authorities. Apparently, their secretive relationship was riddled with shady business. They got arrested shortly after, and I promptly reported everything to the police with my family's backing. I had long suspected that Ben and Mia were in cahoots, planning murder and insurance fraud. Turns out, I unknowingly held 2 accidental insurance policies naming Ben as the beneficiary. I even provided one of his private phone numbers. From monitoring his phone, I noticed 0 contact with Mia, so he must have had a secret number. The police quickly gathered evidence and confirmed their crimes. They had used that private number to detail how they'd kill me and stage the accident for the insurance payout. The police showed me snippets of their chats. I knew they'd been plotting for ages, but I never realized they'd tried it once before, right after Max was born. I was lucky to survive that time, which only made them more cautious later. The sporadic chat logs painted the whole picture. Their affair was simple. Ben had just married me. I had a better degree and a solid family background, which made him insecure. He married me to dodge 2 decades of hard work, but my friend's jokes eventually broke him down. When the new colleague Mia showed interest, he took the bait, thinking it'd make him look superior. In countless messages, he mocked my innocence. But when Mia pushed for something real, he flat out said he married me just to inherit my family's wealth. That's when their wicked plan was hatched. Leaving the police station felt surreal. Everything had finally come to a head. I didn't even attend Ben and Mia's sentencing. My dad later told me they both cried in court, blaming each other, each claiming the other was the mastermind. They ignored court decorum, yelling insults. Meanwhile, I was busy preparing to move abroad. I had an amazing promotion and a raise lined up at the international headquarters, an opportunity I'd once sacrificed for family, but now I was grabbing it with both hands. My retired parents decided to move overseas with me. Hearing that Ben got a life sentence and Mia received 15 years didn't stir any emotion in me anymore. They got what they deserved. Before leaving, I took my parents for a health check and we bumped into Ben's mom and Max. Max had turned into a chubby little kid, totally different from the lively teen he once was. And Ben's mom, looking much older, was ranting at the doctor, accusing the hospital of scamming them by claiming a kid couldn't have diabetes. She ticked off the doctor, who sternly warned that without proper treatment, Max's life was at risk. A fellow patient mentioned that they'd been here before, the first time when Max suddenly vomited and passed out, and the doctor tried to explain the seriousness of it all, but Ben's mom just wouldn't believe it. Now, with Max's condition worsening, fainting outside and being rushed in by a good Samaritan, the police even got involved. Their relationship was a mess. The older woman looked too old to be called mom by the kid, yet the IDs said they were mother and son, a scenario no one in respectable society could stand. I just smiled and kept quiet as Ben's mom made a scene, eventually leaving with Max looking utterly defeated. Honestly, if you think about it, there's no way they can keep up treatment. Ben's mom was clueless then, and even if she gets it now, they probably can't afford it. As for how Max turns out, well, that's no longer my problem. After finishing checkups with my folks, I quickly grabbed plane tickets to head overseas. Sitting on the plane, gazing at the endless blue sky, I felt genuinely happy for the first time in ages. As the plane lifted off, I realized that I wasn't going to let my past weigh me down. My future is wide open, full of endless possibilities.